Beyond the Desert Gate, Chapter 2. A cohort of the 10th. Philo woke early and lay listening to the sounds of the house. It always felt different when his father was at home and there were a man's footsteps and voice about. He thought Lucia had gone in to the sick man next door very early. Philo wanted an excuse to go himself, but was suddenly, uncharacteristically, shy. It was going to be another burning day, and he was thirsty. That gave him an idea. He dressed quickly and went to the well to draw a jug of cold water. From the doorway, Xenos looked rather better, as if the face under the blisters was firmer and the lips less cracked. Philo went across and touched one of the hands that lay limp, palm down, on the mattress. It was still hot with fever, but the fingers moved and clasped his. "Are you thirsty?" Philo bent close and spoke quietly. The dark head turned on the pillow, trying to follow the voice, and the lips parted. He raised Xenos' head as he had done the evening before and tilted the cup. The man drank more easily this time. When Philo had rested his head back, the fingers of his hand moved again, as if searching for something, and Philo took the hand in both of his. "I can still hear horses, but I'm on a bed, I think." The voice was as light as the wind in dry leaves, and the stiff lips stumbled over the words. But the meaning was quite clear. "You hear donkeys in the road. It's steep outside the house, and they always clatter, keeping their feet on the corner." "Whose house?" "Ours. My father's. Apollodorus of Philadelphia. He found you." "Where was I?" "Don't you remember? On the road above Mattress, where the Romans left you." The head on the pillow turned away as if in disbelief, but then shifted back as if Xenos was still trying to see through his swollen eyelids. "I don't remember Mattress or anything." "Who am I?" "We don't know. We thought you would tell us. I called you Xenos last night because you were a stranger. You must be Greek because that's what we're speaking." "Xenos? Well, a name is a beginning. It's been dark and empty, alone inside my head." His fingers slipped free. "School," Conan said from the doorway. "Father says 6 strangers are no excuse. Hurry up. You aren't too old to be beaten." Philo gave Xenos a last anxious look, but the man seemed to need nothing more than to be left in quiet to rest. He was still an ugly sight, but there had been something about his voice and the few words that he had said. Not, "Where am I?" like people were supposed to say. It was going to be hard to concentrate on Aristotle. Apollodorus went out later, taking Conan with him. The eldest son of the house was studying law with the only teacher the city could provide, but his father was anxious that he should learn as much as he could about his own business, and took him on the usual round of visits to bankers and clients that followed every journey. Dark, quiet Nicanor had gone back to his favorite place, the farm of his father's cousin up the northern Gerasa road. Nicanor loved animals and spent as much time as he could outside the noisy, high-walled city. The marketplace stood on the level ground below the east side of the Citadel Hill. It was late morning when Apollodorus and his eldest son passed through it for the second time, and at once the merchant sensed that something was disturbing the usual gossip and selling. Some stallholders seemed to be packing up already, and women were hurrying away with their loaded baskets, but knots of young men were gathering and buzzing like bees in thundery weather, wondering whether to swarm. Apollodorus caught at the arm of a counselor hurrying past. "What is it? What's going on?" "Trajan, legate of the 10th Legion, that's who, and a cohort of his men and more auxiliaries than I care to see near a partially walled city. Excuse me, we have to arrange a deputation to receive him." "Are we going to be attacked?" Conan felt his heart start to thud with an excitement that was only partly frightening. "No, I don't think it's danger we should be worried about so much as nuisance. That is, if everyone keeps his head and no one annoys a drunken centurion and starts a fight. We're used to Romans in the city, but a few at a time, not a whole cohort. We're still allies of Rome, even if we don't like them. It's the Jews we have reason to fear, particularly since the attack 3 years ago." Conan remembered only too well, although he had heard more than he had actually seen. He had been 15 when the raiding parties from Galilee, wrought up almost to insanity by suffering and religious intolerance, had crossed the Jordan and gone on a Greek hunt through the 10 cities. Up on the Citadel Hill in a house with its strong walls, the family had been safe enough, but he would not be likely to forget his first smell of violence. The smoke drifting from the rows of mean shacks behind the market, the color and choking stench when whole houses and their contents went up, and the noise men make when they're hunting to kill and when they die. And it had been dry for many days after the attackers had been driven off. It had taken a long time for the marks of blood to be washed from the streets. It had made it no easier that his mother had Jewish blood, but they had always known it was safer not to discuss that outside the family. "Look, they're here." His father pulled him back into the arched entry of a grain warehouse as the first horseman cantered into a suddenly silent square. A young tribune in a flaunting scarlet cloak, dark-skinned and dark-haired, paced his mount out into the clear space in the center. A jerk of his head distributed his men round the edge, covering the main roads that led down from the Citadel Hill and north and south up the narrow valley between the high ground on either side. It was suddenly even quieter, except for the curt orders and sound of hooves grating on the cobbles as the horses fidgeted. Conan heard the hens in a basket that had been hastily pushed under a half-clear stall begin to cluck and protest. Then he heard another sound, regular and deep, like the pulse of a distant drum, one he had never heard before, but which caught at his belly and made him gasp: the mailed sandals of a cohort on the march. The tribune called his guard to attention, for the legate himself rode at the head of his men. The Trajan, who the year before had besieged Jotapata in Galilee for 47 days and watched while the few of her people who still survived were driven down over the steep cliffs of their city. He was thin and gray-haired, his great white cloak spreading over the rump of a black horse, but he had the dangerousness of a gray sword blade. Behind him, the first 2 sentries of his men followed him into the square and crashed to a halt. A small and rather raggedly arranged group of city elders were hurrying down from the temple of Zeus on the hill. The legate awaited their arrival with no show of impatience, while the crowd that was spilling from the side streets muttered and stared. "Why are they here?" whispered Conan. "They must have come down the north road to link up with the desert patrols. If the magistrates make the right speeches, they'll probably do no more harm than take a week's rations as a gift. But those are the men who sacked Gadora last year, and they might be getting bored. I'm not sure they can really tell the difference between a friendly city that just wants to keep out of trouble and a Jewish garrison learning to fear life more than death. Come on, let's fetch your brother home from school before the centurions let out that lot to look for amusement." The school was round on the west side of the Citadel Hill, and they reached it by way of the side door of the warehouse and back streets almost before the news of the arrival of the Legion had spread so far. The schoolmaster took one look at Apollodorus's face and closed his tablets with a snap. Conan noticed with amusement that Philo seemed to be the next but one to recite, and that his relief at the diversion was comic. What with his father's return and the arrival of Xenos, he had clearly not done his homework. "Can't we go down for just a little while to see what's happening?" he asked his father as his father led the way home. "You don't know what you're talking about. Don't be a fool," snapped Apollodorus. "Now keep close." They were at the end of their own street when a mounted patrol clattered past. The sudden smell of dust thrown up and sweating horses seemed to Philo, as he pressed back against a wall, to be the very scent of danger itself. After he had seen the faces of the men, he knew why his father had hurried. The patrol went by without stopping. Their porter dropped the beam that secured the house gate behind them with a comforting crash. Lucia was waiting for them in the courtyard. "We're here, all safe," said Apollodorus, "except Nicanor, and he'll have the sense to stay where he is." He turned back to the porter. "No one opens that gate for any reason except by my orders and in my presence." Excuse me for one moment. Georgia Ann, would you shut the door to Dad's office? That sound is bothering me. Then there was a feeling of anticlimax. The city outside was only a little quieter than usual at the hour after noon on a warm day. Lucia stumped off toward the kitchen, murmuring about an early lunch, while Apollodorus went through the storeyard, shouting for Esdras as if nothing had happened. Philo went quietly into Xenos' room and stood by the bed. The sick man sensed at once that he was not alone. "Who is it? Is it you?" He did not know Philo's name. "I'm Philo, but you won't know who we are till you can see us." Then he was horrified because Xenos was trying to cry, the tears oozing stickily from his swollen eyelids. Lucia had left a bowl and a cloth by the bed. Philo bathed them very gently with clean water, and the right eye opened just a crack. Xenos caught his breath. "There's light. It's still there." "Of course it is. It's nearly midday. Go to sleep again, and when you wake, the other one will probably open." Xenos gave the ghost of a smile at the mixture of nervousness and authority in the boy's voice and managed to turn partly over on his side. Quite soon, his breathing settled to the steady rhythm of sleep. Philo stood a little longer, watching him. Then he bent closer. The thin cover had fallen away from the curve of Xenos' spine, and his shoulders were bare. Regularly across them was the white grid of scars left from an old beating, something far worse than Philo had ever endured or known his father to order for anyone in the household. Somehow it did not fit with the quiet voice and the clever hands. That would be something else to ask Xenos when he could speak. But the rest of the day dragged on quietly in the merchant's house. Xenos slept till nearly evening and only woke long enough to be fed a bowl of bread sops in broth and then went to sleep again. Lucia, looking down at him, allowed herself to be hopeful and would not disturb him even to dress his burns. And the city outside was quiet, although more than once marching feet passed the house. Then, after sunset, there was shouting and the light of a fire from near the marketplace. Apollodorus went up on the roof to look down between the lower buildings and came down saying grimly that even in a city so small, the men had found some amusement. Conan took turns with his father and Esdras after that to keep watch through the night, but it passed quickly and quietly. In the small room off the storeyard, the man Xenos woke with the first cock and lay in the now familiar darkness, nursing a raw arm where the blisters had broken as he stretched. The garment of pain that seemed to have covered him for longer than he could remember had settled everywhere else to the quiet discomfort of a scratchy blanket, except in the places that had started to itch. He knew that was probably a good thing, but it promised to be a bother later. Very gently, he put a hand up to his face and felt the sticky crust over his eyes and the unfamiliar papery stiffness of cheeks and forehead. He knew he had been burned by the sun. Had the young voice who came and went told him, or did he remember? What sun could have done this, and in what land? How long had it taken? How long to cure a goat hide sewn tight across its frame? He had been tied. Ropes had pulled him taut across the rocky ground. He remembered the jagged edges under his shoulders that, after a while, he had no longer noticed because by then the sun was high. Then the painfully echoing loneliness inside his head was split and shattered with the full memory of that sun and of what had come before, so that he whimpered and clasped at the edge of the mattress where he lay to make sure it was really over and only weakness was holding him still. Adius on the floor grunted and turned but did not wake, and after a while the man too lay quietly, waiting for the dawn he could not see, and the hands from nowhere that tended him and might help him to live with this other now remembered pain. Philo came to the door of his father's bedroom early. Apollodorus, who had taken the middle watch in the night, was only just waking, but he sat up quickly and reached for his sandals when he heard what his son had to say. Xenos has remembered, not everything, but why he was in the desert. He seems much better and the fever's gone. I think he wants to talk. They went together into the room. Xenos' head turned on the pillow when he heard their footsteps and voices. I am Apollodorus, who found you, said the merchant. My son says you would like to talk to us. Would you rather have your wounds dressed first? No, please, that will hurt, and I want to be able to think clearly. It's inside me now. I'm shut in with it because it's the only thing I can remember. I don't know why I did what I did. I can't go back to anything before the road up from the salt sea. But you, sir, must sometimes do illogical things or I wouldn't be here. I've caused you a good deal of trouble, and it's not really a healthy activity for a merchant to rescue a man whom the Romans condemned to die. Each man's conscience is his own, as I think you understand very well, said Apollodorus, smiling. Although the man in the bed could not see the smile, it showed in the voice, and Xenos smiled back. How long ago was it? You have been here 2 nights, in Philadelphia of the 10 cities, and we found you 2 evenings before that. Where did you come from? Asked Philo. I think I know the name, but I can't remember why. Oh, where did you come from? Asked Philo. I think I know the name, but I can't remember why I was there or what it was like. Would it be Jerusalem? You have traveled a difficult journey then, friend. What were you doing there? I don't know. That's what's so uncanny. Yesterday I couldn't remember anything. Who I was, what language I was speaking. Today it's like breaks in the cloud. I can remember places. Rome, Athens, I think. I'm sure I've been there, but what I was doing in Jerusalem and why I was trying to get away with a party of women and children and wounded men, I don't know. We were making for Machaerus. Vespasian still has patrols out between Jericho and the cities up here on the plateau. He doesn't want anyone to escape from what will happen to Jerusalem. I think we knew that, but all I really remember is night and difficult roads, not fighting, exhausted children, a beast going lame, you know. The moment comes when you think it would be easier to just die where you are rather than struggle further on. I suppose that must have been what happened 5 nights ago. Otherwise, I don't know why I did it. I don't think I knew the people very well. I had no kin among them. And you don't know your name? Oops, that's Philo. And you don't know your name? Asked Philo. But when he saw that distressed Xenos, he put his own hand over the fingers that had clenched again on the edge of the mattress. Xenos' fingers loosened and clasped him back and did not let go when he spoke again. No, that's what hurts most, not to have a name. We came to the ascent to Machaerus at the beginning of the night. I think we must have been hiding by day. You know the heat of the Jordan Valley, even if it hadn't been crawling with Vespasian's men. I think we knew that we would be safe in Machaerus if we could reach it. But then we found that we had a patrol behind us. They must have cleared the road once already because we found the bodies. We knew what would happen if they caught up with us. The mounted auxiliaries had stopped asking who people were before they killed them, and they seemed to prefer killing women to men. He went silent for a moment, but the thin fingers still gripped Philo tightly. When he woke again, his voice had gone flat, as if he was finding it difficult to control. I remember the leader of our group. His name was Yochanan, a big man with a huge beard and his right arm in a sling. Our group was quite large. In the past, it would have been difficult to hide. The patrol was coming up fast, and there was no chance that we could escape unless we had more time. He stopped again, then said in a stronger voice, I can't think why I imagined it would work. Why in heaven did I do it? I'm not a soldier. No, that at least I do know. It wasn't my sort of an idea. What did you do, friend? Asked Apollodorus. I asked Yohanan what the patrol would do if they thought they had stumbled on a large encampment. He said they would stop to reconnoiter it carefully before they attacked. For all they knew, it might be Nabateans from Petra or merchants like you, and the Romans have no quarrel with them at the moment. He asked me what was in my mind. I said fires, 4 or 5 of them, and the 2 noisiest donkeys, one of which was lame and no loss to anyone. I thought if I could delay the patrol an hour, it might be long enough. He didn't think it was likely that I could, but he agreed it was worth trying if that was what I wanted to do. It did work. It was nearer 2 hours before they finally rode in between the fires and found me alone, prodding the donkey. 2 hours, whispered Apollodorus. Yes, a little after midnight, and it was an hour after dawn. The sun was up when they tied me out. Why didn't they kill you outright? They seemed to think that because I had caused them so much trouble, I must be trying to protect someone important. But I wasn't, except isn't everyone important to themselves? But they... His hands broke free from Philo. It was all there now, passing behind his swollen eyelids, the hot night wind and flaring torches, the humiliation of complete helplessness, the harsh Roman voices, and, at the end, pain. And behind the pain, a deeper horror that this had all happened before, and perhaps in spite of what was being done to him, things which must end soon. In a few hours, he would wake up, as one does after some dreams that keep returning, and it would all be to suffer again. He said, the centurion, as they were tying me out, "Tell the sun, then, whatever it is you know, if he'll listen. We'll catch up with your friends soon enough without your help, or you could tell the first hyena to find you tonight if you're still alive. But I doubt you'll last so long, a pity because they like their meat fresh." Then they all laughed, particularly the man whose idea it had been, and wheeled their horses almost on top of me, so I thought I was going to be trampled, but all I got was a mouthful of dust. He was crying with deep sobs that shook his whole body. Apollodorus slipped an arm round him to hold him steady against his shoulder. "And are you sorry? You know that what you did was an act that the gods should reward for, and for which men should praise you." Xenos steadied himself with a hand on the merchant's arm. "I know, but when I'm still in pain and the hours go on and on, I have to live or try to live with the results of what I did. It seems that honor is going to last a great deal longer than I planned for." His voice caught again in what was almost a laugh. "And what God will reward me when I cannot even remember who it is I have worshipped?"